So I remember I think it was 2 weekends ago now, at least when we're recording this. I got to meet you for the first time
Yep.
after one of my flights in Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson International Airport. And you and I, we talked a little bit. We talked probably for a couple months now.
Yes.
But it
Yep.
was really cool to finally get to meet you in person, roughly. We didn't get to talk too long, but I was like,
Yeah.
I started to really think about, I'm like, this would be a great guest to have on the TomCast. So welcome to the TomCast.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome.
I know this is your first podcast, so
Yep.
we're gonna keep it kind of generic, but I think you'll be okay. So what I like to do with my guests is kind of start off with talking about their life kind of growing up. Like, were you a
hmm
good student? Did you move around? Like, I moved around a lot. Did you play any sports, stuff like that?
Yeah. So when I was young, I didn't move around at all. I've lived near Milwaukee my whole life. So didn't, to be honest, didn't really do much traveling at all. And I never was interested in aviation. It's
Hmm.
something more recent that I've gone into, but just had a normal life. My dad is actually a graphic designer, so I actually started getting into graphic designing. Um, I have Photoshop that I use a lot and I know how to use very well. And so I actually, for the longest time, I had my like life set on being a graphic designer, and I was looking at design schools and stuff. And then all of a sudden, about 2 years ago, I was actually with my uncle at his cabin, and one of his friends was there, and he's a pilot for Delta, and he flies the MD-90s, which are actually one of my favorite planes now. But
Hmm.
um, he introduced me to Flight Radar 24, and I was in love. I For weeks after that, I constantly just clicked on the little planes. I tracked them. I learned about the different plane types. I was intrigued. Like never had this kind of experience before, where I was so hooked on something, and it kind of just grew into a passion. I started going to the airport, watching planes landing right over my head. I loved it, and then I started making some friends in aviation, and then I got my first camera and started plane spotting, and that's kind of fueled my love for aviation.
Yeah. So it seems like it's been kind of a really fast sequence
Oh
of you
yeah.
kind of getting into aviation. Like for me, I don't know, I was like 12 when I really first realized I was into aviation, but I had family inside the industry, so it kind of made sense. And I
hmm
always like to sit there and kind of just talk to people that not don't necessarily really have like family inside aviation, because it's common, because if you have a mom or a
Yep.
dad that's a pilot or some flight attendant,
Oh yeah.
a lot of their kids end up loving aviation. But how you kind of come from a different background of not having
Yep.
that direct aviation background, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How did you learn about aircrafts? Like when you first saw them on flight radar? Like I know whenever I first started learning about airplanes, I found flight radar, and then I found this like dictionary. And it had like it was like a picture dictionary. It had like 747s,
Yeah.
A380, 767. And I was like right under the approach path at like London Heathrow. I was in Windsor, and I would sit
Okay.
there and look up in the sky and see the plane. And then I
Yep.
would like hold up my iPad and look at the encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned. So how did you like learn the aircrafts?
To be honest, I just looked them up. I mean, I didn't have any specific thing that I looked at. Just experience them in experience them like in person. Like, to be honest,
Uh-huh.
I didn't see my first 777 till last year.
Wow.
Like, and I was amazed because it diverted to actually my airport, Milwaukee, which we don't get 777s. So that
Yeah.
was the first time I ever saw a 777. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm in love with this plane," just because it was the massive size at an airport like Milwaukee, where the biggest thing we get is like an A321 or 737. So to be honest, I just by experience I kind of learned about the planes. To be honest,
Yeah, that's the best way. It's really the best way to learn, especially when you're plane spotting there right there at an airport,
yep.
and you have other people around you that are like going crazy about airplanes. And
Oh yeah, me and my friends get crazy sometimes over planes.
well, I kind of joke around. Like anytime I see your stories and you have commentary, I'm like, that's the voice of MKE right there.
Yes, yeah. We're as MKE spotters, we're known for having commentary on our stories.
Yeah,
We get
yeah,
pretty excited.
I love it. Like honestly, the first guy that I knew who ever did that was Matt Cochran from
Yes,
at
yep.
Hartsfield Jackson.
Atlanta.
Yeah, and I talked to him. I've seen him from the very beginning. I can't remember. I was like 12 or 13,
Hmm.
when he first started, and I talked to him for a long time. But he was like really like one of the first guys that actually started to do commentary. And like there's some elements of that things that you do that remind me of him. And I'm just like, well, this guy's the voice of MKE over here.
Yep. Hey, it's not bad to be known as that, I guess.
I think it's pretty cool. Like
Yeah,
anytime I see MKE, I think of your voice.
awesome. And I don't know if you know my friend Lewis,
Oh
but
yeah.
he too. Also, people say that about him all the time. Me and him are like the voices of MKE.
He's got such a deep voice.
Oh yeah, he's known for MKE is like his signature word.
I don't know. I just love it. Like anytime I see a story there about a C-17 or
Oh
something.
yeah, we get so excited. Yeah, it's great.
It is really great, and I love seeing it, and I love seeing how sometimes you all have like I don't know. It seems like you have 30 people there at once.
Oh yeah, we bring in crowds sometimes. There's a lot of Milwaukee spotters, just not many always come out. I mean, sometimes it's different people every time. So
Isn't your
it's
airport growing quite a bit too?
oh yeah. We actually just got international flights, Cancun and
Hmm.
Punta Cana. We
Wow.
get now
Okay,
on
that's
Swift
pretty good.
Airlines. Yep.
Swift Air.
Yeah, they fly 737-800 to Punta
Wow,
Cana and uh, yep. So
that's
it's
pretty
actually
cool
pretty
though.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think United added a couple as well.
Yep. And well, Air Canada keeps getting pushed back, but we had Air Canada pre-COVID, but they just keep getting pushed back when their return date is because they haven't opened the border, so no one
That
wants to
makes
fly.
sense.
Yeah,
Was it to Toronto or Vancouver or both, or
Toronto.
just Toronto? Okay.
Yep,
Huh. Well,
Sierra
yeah.
Day 200.
Oh no, that's
Yeah,
terrible.
we got two daily though. Two daily we
Okay.
had.
And that was your first like international destination?
No, Delta has always had Cancun,
Oh, okay.
so Delta I think was the first one.
Okay. Interesting.
But for real, like the international airline was the first one was Air Canada. Yeah.
That makes sense because I see a lot of smaller airports. Then Air Canada brings in their CRJ, and then boom, they're
Yep.
international.
And the Sierra 200s fill up a lot. Like I'm surprised they didn't upgrade it to something a little bigger, but I guess they just decided on adding more daily flights instead of getting a bigger aircraft.
Yeah, there's the in aviation. It's a hard dilemma of adding. Do you make the aircraft bigger or do you just add another
Yes.
slot?
Yep.
And there's a whole science to that. It's not an easy equation to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it depends on a couple of things. But yeah, I've been
Yep.
kind of keeping my eyes on MKE. Like I've been seeing them. I check World Air. I use this website called World Airline News to look for
Oh, okay.
news every day.
Yep.
And I see MKE and they're like every so often it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually been doing so well, really well. I mean, last weekend it was the busiest I've ever seen it there, so it was
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Definitely
So
coming back in numbers.
so you work for MKE,
Yep.
the airport. Well, part of the airport at least.
Yep.
And the funny thing is you and I, we both basically have the same job,
Yep.
and and
Essentially,
I
yep.
think it's pretty funny because I honestly think that customer service slash wheelchair assistance things like that is a pretty underrated position when you're
Oh
younger.
yeah.
Like for me, one of my favorite parts is kind of just connecting with the passengers.
Yep.
And then it's like even better when you're an av geek because you can tell them all these things about, hey, you're going on a 737 or you're going on an A320,
Yep.
and there's going to be a lot of space in here. And then sometimes I get the reverse, I call it reverse logistics, where they're coming into MK. Well, for you, I'm
Mm-hmm.
coming into MKE or coming into my airport, and then I'll ask them, how was their flight, and
Yep.
things like that. So what would you say some of your favorite elements are, like as being
I
an
Yeah,
agent?
I definitely like seeing all the different reasons that people are traveling for. That's one of the first things I always ask them after I ask them where they're going is the reason why they're traveling. And I just like, I mean, I've heard everything, like all different reasons for traveling. So it's kind of interesting to hear that. And yeah, so and then another thing is like a lot of people bring up when I start talking about I like planes and stuff. A lot of people bring up like a few of my passengers used to work for Midwest Airlines, and Midwest Airlines used to be like a staple at Milwaukee, and they're obviously not around anymore. So I always like when I get those passengers, I always like we have a good conversation about that
Yeah.
stuff. So I really like that part. And then just when, I mean, there's times when it is dead. So it's kind of like I just get to walk around and look at airplanes, or I get to stand in the jet bridge when the jet bridge is pulling up to the plane. It's something that not many other people get to experience. And I love it. I mean, that's something I love.
It's a fun part, especially like another part I love is talking to the crews, like the flight
Yep.
attendants or the captains and pilots
Mm.
and stuff like that. I love that time to kind of just sit there and talk to them about the airline or what's going on.
I always ask the crew, like if I see a crew, I always ask, where are you guys based? And hear a boatload of different answers. And it's kind of cool, especially Southwest. There's all different bases that they come from and stuff. And a lot of pilots have been coming in saying, oh my gosh, it's so freezing here, because a lot of them are based in like Phoenix and Florida, and of course it's very cold here, so
Yeah, it's a big difference for
different.
them compared to what they're used to.
And the snow too, a lot of them, the snow too, they always mention.
That makes sense considering your location.
Yep.
Is there any like crew bases up there in MKE? I'm sure that there are.
Air Wisconsin, that's the
Air
only one.
Wisconsin. Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
they actually have a hangar here, they do tons of maintenance here, and so yep,
Okay.
that's the
See,
only one.
see, at my airport, we have an Allegiant hub. So we have crew. We used to have a PSA
Okay.
crew hub. We used to have a Endeavor crew hub. And then we also have our Allegiant crew hub. And then we have an Allegiant maintenance. They can do maintenance for Allegiant.
Hmm.
And then we have the Endeavor maintenance hub. So we have quite a bit of crews that can
Oh
come
yeah,
to my
wow.
airport that I work at
Yeah,
and be based there. So it's always kind of cool, but COVID's kind of changed some of it. So now we
I'm
lost our
sure, yeah.
PSA, we lost our Endeavor. So, and we used to have ExpressJet. We used to have maintenance
Oh,
facility for ExpressJet. Now,
okay.
obviously, they're not, they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
But it's just cool, being a customer service agent is what we call it, but wheelchair assistants, some people call it different things. It's obviously not like a desired position, but there's
Yep.
actually some perks to it. And I've had some wild stories to people spitting out apple pies on TSA tray tables, and and
Yeah.
and people that are blind. And sometimes like you have someone that's missing one of the key things, or maybe they're deaf, maybe they're blind, and it kind of just puts things into perspective for you.
I always come home with stories, and I always tell my parents, and they're like, "Whoa!" Some of the stuff is just not believable. What happens?
It's
It's
wild.
crazy.
Every day is
Yeah.
different.
Yep. Yeah. It's always a surprise. You don't know what's gonna happen in that day.
I know. And it's just like one day can be the busiest day ever, and then the next day it's just dead. Like
Yep.
and it can
We
be on the
actually, the whole
weekends.
month of January was just like a kind of a dead month, which kind of sucked. But now it's back on the uprise, so it's kind of nice.
Yeah, because I replied to you on one of your stories about passenger demand, and I was like, like I looked at the TSA numbers, and
Hmm.
as we're recording this in early February, I mean we're getting a couple 1 million days
Yeah.
of people passing through the TSA checkpoints, and that's quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Bring on the passengers.
It,
Something last weekend. I was talking to one of the gate agents, Southwest gate agents. Every single Florida flight went out completely capped that day.
wow.
Every single one, and we have three different destinations in Florida we fly to. So, I mean, that's a lot.
It's the demands came back way faster than I thought.
Oh yeah, me too.
I mean, it took a dip obviously in March, and through
Yeah.
those days and parts of there were a couple summer days that were decent, but once we got to Christmas time, I mean, Christmas time, it was actually picking up, and
Wow, that was crazy. Yeah.
it was wild during
Yep.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving is. I was hired right before Thanksgiving. I came back and there were so many passengers. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it was huge. Because I've been in and out of my work, just because we haven't had that much demand,
Hmm.
and so I've came back at times where there's been demand, and it's just been insane.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, it's a fun experience, and it's good to see that aviation, at least the commercial side, is making a comeback.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So I kind of want to talk a little bit like, so I know you said earlier on, you talked about how you weren't necessarily interested in aviation. I kind of wanted to go into this path for people that aren't necessarily into
Yeah.
aviation, but what other things were you like interested in doing before you got into aviation? Like you said something about like graphic design.
Yeah, that's to be honest what I desired. I still like I love designing the things. I have a YouTube channel and I love designing the thumbnails for my YouTube channel
Uh-huh.
because I get to use Photoshop and create stuff. And I'm one of my classes at school is a Photoshop class, so I love it. And I still like it. It's just that aviation is now my main thing that I just love it. So
Yeah. I see you kind of did like a redesign, or you kind of
yep.
was that all you that you did that?
Yep. My logo and everything that was
That
all
was pretty
me. Yep.
fresh. I have to say I
Yeah,
like that.
thanks. Thanks.
I usually get my stuff kind of I usually get someone else to do like I do
Mhm.
my thumbnails, but like when it comes to like the artwork here on the podcast, I had someone else do that.
Yeah.
But doing your own graphic design work is so important. Like
Mhm.
it can save you through so many times of social media content and
Oh yeah.
YouTube channel art or thumbnails and podcast channel art. I mean, there's so many different avenues that it relates to.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yep.
it's a good skill to have. So I kind of want to talk a little bit. I know you've seen a little bit. I've seen a little bit of stories about you flying around.
Yep.
Kind of more, and not obviously commercial. We'll get there later on, but
Yeah.
um, more flying in general aviation. So I think it'd be kind of cool because I know there's a lot of pilots or people that are wanting to be pilots that are listening to this podcast. So when did you start? I guess kind of you decided, hey, I want to be a private pilot, and kind of describe that journey a little bit.
Yeah. So it was right around the time after I started getting into plane spotting and stuff like that. One of my friends was doing stuff for his private, and I saw other people were, and I was just super interested in it. And for my birthday, my my uncle actually got me a discovery flight, and I mean I just fell in love. I literally fell in love. I got to fly the plane while it was in like level flight, and I was like, this is something that I really want to do. And uh and then I flew on a few flights Southwest, and I went up to the cockpit after the flight. The pilots are all super nice, and it's just something that I really want to do as a career. So that's kind of when I fell in love. And then last October, I started flight lessons, and yeah, it just all went up from there. And one thing that I do wish I had done differently was sort of do the ground stuff first. I kind of went into it and did all the flying stuff. I have all
Mhm.
my solos, all my cross countries done. I mean, the ground stuff is the harder part. The
Yeah.
flight stuff, I mean, it's easy. You just get repetitively do it, and it you kind of just gets in your head. The ground stuff is a little bit tough, and that's kind of what I'm stuck on right now.
Yeah, it's the same for me, but it's been reversed. So like I started out with ground school first. And some people said, hey, you should start out with the ground school stuff first. Some people are like, oh, you should do both at the same time.
Hmm.
Everyone kind of does it differently, but from a lot of the people and a lot of books that I've read about becoming a private pilot, they say, do your ground first because it's the hardest. Because there's a lot of people that want to go
Yeah,
out there and go fly, and people say that's the fun part is the flying part, and
it
and
is.
some
It
things
really
go
is.
together. Like there's certain things that are hard to understand in ground unless you're actually flying in the aircraft.
Hmm.
And I think it'd be kind of in the converse side of things. You don't really have an appreciation for certain things either if you don't have the ground
Oh yeah,
knowledge. So
I'm starting to see that more now as I do the ground stuff. I kind of realize that stuff.
yeah, and I think that it probably comes down to how you are, but I think you're overall probably better off doing the ground stuff first.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. Now that I kind of did the reverse thing, I really wish I didn't. Yeah.
but but you see it's interesting to see your perspective and kind of have my perspective because I haven't done much flight training at all.
Yep.
I'm still doing my written,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to get that thing passed because they made the written now much harder than what it used to be. There used to be like a bank, I believe, of like 300 or 400 questions.
Yep.
Now they changed the bank to 800 questions. And it's really difficult. I'm
It
really
is.
struggling with it. And a lot of pilots, before they had it easier because they could just kind of go in there
Hmm.
and have those questions memorized, and most of them would score uh, high 90s. So some people would get hundreds, and now people are
Yep.
getting like 80s. So they made it much harder than what it used to be.
Hmm. Well, one of
Um,
the things that's crazy is I mean I flew to 3 different airports and back here, and before I even like knew some of the ground stuff. So it was kind of crazy. I, I don't know. It's kind of crazy to think that, but I did it.
I mean, there's some parts. I'm just gonna be very. I think there's some parts to ground that don't necessarily matter. Like,
Yes. Yep.
like when you drive a car, at least in my state of Tennessee, I think it's same in Wisconsin. That you obviously don't start driving off the car first. I mean, you learn about the signs, you learn about
Yep. Oh yeah.
accidents and reporting things. You learn about that stuff, but when you start driving, you're like, oh, who cares about that stuff? I can drive a car.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's kind of I think it's kind of similar to flying an airplane. Like, you don't necessarily have to know everything exactly, but having the general knowledge of it will make your life so much easier.
Yeah, and before I did my solo, I did have to like pass a kind of like a written test of kind
Yeah.
of the basics of flight and stuff like that. So I definitely knew what I was doing. Like
Yeah.
that's for sure. I knew what I was doing and everything in the flight, but I just didn't know everything, all the ground stuff yet. So
Yeah, you probably just didn't know like all the performance and the flight computer
yeah,
and all the, you know, the headings, you know, the true headings, stuff like
yeah,
that.
yep,
But you knew the general things. You knew,
yep.
you know, obviously how to start up an aircraft and how to recover from a stall, and you know, you knew all those things.
Hmm.
So you know, that's this is I think this is going to help a lot of people out, kind of listening to both perspectives and kind of
Oh
seeing
yeah,
what works best for them, because not many people talk about it.
no, and that's something that I wish I would have heard before I started. Like, could have heard some perspectives. So this definitely would have been helpful
Yeah,
to
so
hear that before.
I think we're gonna help out a lot of people there.
Yeah.
So you were talking a little bit during there, and I can't believe I haven't asked this question yet. But as of your stage right now in life, what do you see yourself having a career in aviation? And if you do, where do you want to be?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to Minnesota State Mankato for aviation next year. So I've
Okay.
already been accepted and stuff for that. So I've gotten accepted into the School of Aviation, and a pilot, being a pilot is like my end goal.
Okay.
Commercial pilot. I mean, my preference is Delta, but I mean, with any airline, I'd be happy with any airline
Okay.
pretty much. I want to fly. That's what my heart is set on. So
I can understand that. Do you want to do like I had a guy on called Fit to Fly Apparel. I have had an episode
yep.
with him a couple of times, and he went to Auburn, and he was wanting to be a pilot, and he would always talk about, you know, a lot of people go to college and they only want to be pilots, but they don't get like a degree in like aviation management. So in case
Hmm.
something like COVID happens when they get laid off, they have that more aviation management / business degree to
Yep.
back up, to fall back on. So is that something that you're going to consider, or you're doing, or are you just going to go straight into being like focused on a pilot?
Yeah, so I think the degree is called, I think it's like a bachelor in aviation. So
Okay.
I think it should cover everything. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So it probably has a little bit of everything. I mean, you'll probably talk about like aviation economics and,
Yep.
you know, weather and, you know, all these like, it's kind of going to be a bit of everything. You're probably going to get a taste of all aspects of aviation, honestly,
Hmm.
because the aviation industry is huge. I mean, there's when you got air traffic controllers,
Oh
pilots, flight
yeah.
attendants, airfield maintenance,
There's a lot
aircraft
of
maintenance.
jobs.
It just doesn't end. There's just so
Hmm.
many different views and perspectives of aviation that makes it so fun to kind of just look at every side of it.
Yep. I
But
definitely agree.
that'll be good for you. So you're gonna go 4 years
Hmm.
there.
Yeah, and I'm actually planning on enlisting into the Air National Guard at the Minneapolis
Oh
airport.
yeah.
So I hope to kind of start hopefully I could be a pilot for them, and that's kind of how I
Mhm.
get it started into. And then they have they help you out with your tuition, so they
Yeah.
pay all your tuition and stuff. I just would have to enlist and be, I think, for 5 years or something like that. So,
Mhm.
but that's something that I've been looking into. Next month I'm going to touring the base, so hopefully that goes well.
The National Guard's a good way to go.
Yeah.
If you can if you can definitely pass like the more military medicals and stuff like that, because sometimes they're pretty strict about certain
Oh
things.
yeah.
It's definitely the way to go, because they'll pay for like all your stuff. They'll give you your training.
Hmm.
It's a great way to go.
Yep.
Um, so we kind of talked about the pilot side. We talked about you going into college. but I kind of want to shift into your trip reports or flight reports. I don't
Yep.
really like to call it trip reports because it's like when I
It's
think of
not really.
yeah, it's not really like a trip report because like it's like, okay, you got to vlog after the flight too.
Yeah. I mean, I call it trip reports, but it
Yeah.
really isn't a trip report.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. I do the same thing at times. I'm like, okay,
Uh-huh.
that's why I try and stick to the word flight review because that's the part that I really try and focus on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've seen you slowly started to create some content
Hmm.
for that, and it's something I've created content for as well on YouTube. I mean, I'm sure a lot of listeners and you and I both, we've seen a lot of people create content about it on YouTube as well.
Yep.
And So what kind of got you into that aspect?
So I kind of I used to record all my takeoffs and landings that I would take in flights, and that's the only thing I would record. And I started, watching. I started watching trip reports, flight reviews, whatever you want to call it. I started watching them online,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I go on flights. Why don't I try this? And I started. My first ever one that I recorded was the last MD-88. Well, the second to last MD-88 flight, and I was like, I mean, it kind of got a good amount of views, and I was like, this is something that I love. Like, I'm taking flights, I'm flying on flights. I mean, why not record and make content out of it? And
Yeah.
I kind of fell in love with it, to be honest.
It's fun. It's really
Yeah.
it's really addicting. Like once you do it for the first time, you're like, man, this would be fun to do it on like all different airlines and
Yep.
experiences. And it's fun. Like I like doing it. And I see that you've started to really do it a lot as well.
Yep.
Um,
I have content to take me through many months.
Oh, it takes forever to edit because like I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
about you, but I edit stuff like little clips. Like I'll take like,
Yeah, same.
wait, okay, so you understand the grind because like
It takes you forever.
I had this like one guy who wanted to edit my videos, and I'm like, like there's going to be a good amount of work to this, and he's like, oh yeah, I do sports edits all the time. So okay, and I sent him like 40,
It's
50.
very different.
I sent him like 40, 50, 60 clips, and he hadn't said a word since then. So
Oh yeah.
it's a lot of work. But once you get it out, once you get it all edited, like it's so nice.
Oh yeah. It's so worth it.
It's great. Like I love editing it, but it takes forever.
And something that I liked is I show it to my family, and they're all like, whoa, this is what you do on flights, and this is how your flights went, because they all the time ask, and I just like, I don't know how to explain how my flight went. So
You
they
just
always
show them.
watch it, and yeah, I show them my trip report or flight review, and yeah, there it is.
What are some of the things that you look for when you do like a flight review?
I mean, there's kind of some specific things I always stick to is record the aircraft before I record myself. Like if I'm driving to the airport, I always record a clip of me driving to the airport. The in-flight food, I mean, I know now in times of COVID, there's not been very much kind of food options and stuff. So it's kind of like people kind of want to know that. So it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of cool to document that, and then other people will see, hey, oh, United gives you like a actual beverage service, so maybe I'll choose United or stuff like that. So
I did a lot of when I was in college. I took this one class that talked all about quality, how it's subjective, and I would always like we had to do like some polls. So I would always do stuff on aviation, and I would ask people, what are the things that they look for whenever they go on a flight? And these are people that aren't necessarily interested in aviation. These are just like normal people, and it was different on each person. Like some person loved the seat, some person loved the food, some person liked the Wi-Fi, some person like, I don't know, the aircraft. Like it was like different on every person. And so like for me, whenever I'm doing like a flight review, I try and keep that in mind, and that's why I try and focus in on a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And it's hard because there's so much happening.
There's so much happening so fast. Yeah. Especially like because some of the shorter flights, you have barely any time, and you gotta get everything. And so
I know if you have under an hour, you're screwed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because you have to do the takeoff, landing,
yeah,
and then before you know it, you're already like mid-flight.
I know.
You gotta squeeze in.
I've recorded everything and it's mid-flight
Yeah.
already.
I know you got to squeeze in things. It's just
Yep.
like, oh man, it's tough. That's why I always like to do the flight reviews on like 2 hours or more. Like
Uh-huh.
like having a transcon is amazing. You have like just enough time to do all your content, and then you
Yep.
can just actually relax for a little bit.
And yeah, enjoy the flight. And
Yeah,
something I've noticed is on the small flights, I'll be like, oh shoot, there's something little that I missed. And I'm just like, it's okay. I mean, if it's something little, there's nothing I can do.
I do that all the time, honestly. But there's
Yeah.
times like where I'm like stuck into like a work mode, and I'm like, I've done a flight review on this flight, I've done another flight review on this flight. I just want to relax and just enjoy the flight.
Yep.
And it's like it's a tough balance because like I want to create content, I want to talk about the airline, but it's like sometimes you just got to sit back and enjoy the flight too.
Yeah.
Watch a
Yeah.
movie,
Oh, for
eat the
sure.
snacks, recline the chair if no one's behind you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Sometimes you get carried away doing them.
Yeah.
That's the problem that I've had because I used to do like a lot of flights during the summer, like after COVID. I think because like we were all like at home, and so when things started to really get better in the summer, I was doing like I'd do like 4 or 5 flights per day sometimes.
Yeah.
And I was like working on all of those, and it just
Yep.
wore me out at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
This whole next month, I'm actually taking it off. I'm not going to go on any trips or anything, but that's kind of like, I'm going to try to get a bunch of content out that I haven't been able to.
Interesting.
So that's just kind of my approach on it. But
see, I have like an SSD, and it's just full of like clips and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And so now I've just organized it by like, the aircraft and the airline, and then like all that stuff all together. So it's easy for me to go find it instead of just dumping it all over the place.
Oh, yeah. Same. Let me see if I have it. Yeah, I have literally all my flight footage on this thing right here.
Is that an SSD as well?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a little hard drive.
Yeah. See, I got one of these. The T7. It has like 2 terabytes. I mean, this.
Yeah. Mine is 2 terabytes as well, and I store everything on there.
Yeah, it's a beast. Like it's crazy, but like
because I don't have enough room to store all that on my computer.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. I don't think anyone else does. I mean, you got takeoffs, and I do my takeoffs and landings in like 2.7K. Like those are
Sam. Yeah, 2.7K. That takes up a lot of storage.
I know it takes up like 3 gigs, 4 gigs.
Yep.
But it's insane. Like, and I like to do 2.7K because like with 1080, if you crop in, it looks like pixels.
It's really bad.
Yeah, it's rough. So now I do like
at least it's recoverable. Kind of, if you do it in 2.7K, it actually looks decent.
Yeah, it looks. I mean, 4K would look ideal, but like I don't have enough like tech yet to be 4K.
Yeah.
And it would look good, but it's just like, man, like my I have a MacBook Air. It sounds like I'm running flight sim on it when I'm editing flight reviews, and I keep thinking it's just gonna like explode on one of these days.
Even my MacBook Pro, I tried to edit some things in 4K. I mean, it's very laggy. Wow. So it's rough sometimes.
It's tough. Like,
yeah,
it's definitely like people think, like the flight reviews are luxurious, and they can be. Like, they definitely can be, but they can be a lot of work.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah. But yeah, so I love how we can just talk about so many different things on aviation. That
I love talking about aviation so much. Like, it's just something that has grown into such a passion for me. So
it is
something amazing.
And see, you're pretty unique because I haven't had someone here on the TomCast that's kind of had flight reviews and your position in training, and obviously customer service agent, wheelchair assistants, things like that had like the similar backgrounds as I do. And so that was just, it's pretty, you're just a great fit for here on the TomCast.
That was awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
But I like to do this at the end. Has there been anything, like any other thoughts or anything you've been seeing like in the world happening? Like here for me, I've been kind of getting into cryptocurrencies and, anything like that. Has there been anything like on your mind or sports related?
I don't know. I watch sports. I used to be kind of bigger into sports than I am now, but I like sports a lot. So
who's your favorite teams?
The Bucks, Milwaukee Bucks.
Makes sense.
Giannis. Yeah, and then the Milwaukee Brewers, and then I'm actually a Cleveland Indians fan. So
interesting.
Yeah, my cousins live in Cleveland, and I go there a lot. So I've gone to a few Cleveland Indians games there, and so I kind of am a fan of them too. So
Do you like any football?
yep, Green Bay Packers. They're my
Yeah.
favorite. So,
Yeah.
so mad we came so close.
Yeah. I was watching that game. I'm like, why don't you go for it? You have
Oh
Aaron
yeah,
Rodgers
that
who
made me so mad. Kick the field goal was ridiculous.
it's stupid. Like I was like,
Yep.
why? Like and then like I went back and watched some replays. I'm like, Aaron Rodgers could have possibly ran it into like he probably had like a touchdown like right before if he would have scrambled to the right, he could have had a touchdown
Yep.
on that third down.
If they went for it and missed it, I would have been way more happy than than what they did. Like that
Yeah.
just makes me so upset. You can't just kick a field goal and expect the defense, which the defense was good this year, but you
Against
can't
Tom
just rely
Brady in
on
the
your
fourth
defense.
quarter.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
can't just rely on the defense for that.
Yeah, Tom Brady. Either way, Tom Brady was getting the ball back some way,
Hmm.
and he was going to make a run. So I'm just
Oh
like,
yeah.
you got to let everything loose. You got it. You got to go for it on fourth, even if you don't
Yeah.
get it. I
Yeah.
mean,
There were
heck,
so many chances they had in that game, though.
they did.
There was a lot.
I love that was a good game to watch. Like that was a really good game. I sat back and watched a little bit of it. I'm like, man, this is a good game.
Hmm. I actually was working that day, so the only thing I saw was the very end.
Yeah.
That's actually the only thing. But then I went back and saw the highlights and stuff. But
Yeah, see, sometimes I'll be working because I work weekends as well, and
mhm.
I would miss like a bunch of football.
Yeah,
And
that really stunk this year. That was the one thing.
yeah, yeah. So I'd sometimes have to watch I like the Panthers, so I'd just watch like the Panthers
Hmm.
last part when I was at work and stuff like that, which it kind of sucked working the weekends, but hey, it's all right.
Yeah,
You gotta do
it
what
is
you gotta
what it
do.
is.
Yeah.
The weekend's the busiest time, so that's
It
always
really is though.
yeah.
Are your this could probably depend on your airport, but are Sundays, I call Sundays like the second coming. Like you don't know if they're gonna be busy or they're
Oh
gonna
yeah,
be like dead. Like
yeah.
sometimes it's dead.
Yesterday was busier than Saturday, which like almost never happens. But there's a
Yeah.
few Sundays where it'll just be unexpectedly busy. It was crazy yesterday.
I've had some of my craziest days on Sundays. Like it's just weird. Like I don't know why
Unexpected.
Sundays are that way.
Yep.
Like Saturdays are usually consistently busy, but Sundays you don't know if it's gonna be dead or busy.
Hmm. Oh yeah, I agree.
Well, that's great. But I really do appreciate you taking the time to come on the
Yeah, for
TomCast
sure.
today.
Thanks so
This
much for
is
having me.